It's April 1500. You're a sailor on a Portuguese warship, weeks from home, and everything feels fine. Great, actually. The captain seems confident. The wind is good. Nobody is panicking. The only problem is you're sailing directly toward a continent that isn't on any map, and you have absolutely no idea. That continent is Brazil, the fifth largest country on Earth, home to 215 million people, the Amazon rainforest, and a culture unlike anything else on the planet. And it exists, in the shape it exists, speaking the language it speaks. Because one fleet of ships went the wrong way and bumped into it by accident. Or maybe not by accident. That's the question historians have been fighting about for 500 years. But either way, somebody had to explain this to the king. And that letter is one of the strangest documents ever written. To understand how spectacularly wrong this voyage went, you need to understand how spectacularly important it was supposed to be. It's 1500. Portugal is the dominant maritime power on Earth. They've cracked the route to India, around the tip of Africa, and the spice trade is printing money. King Manuel I has handed command of 13 ships and roughly 1,500 men to a nobleman named Pedro Álvares Cabral. This is Portugal's biggest, most expensive fleet ever assembled. Cabral is 32 years old. He has almost no sailing experience, no pressure. Think of it like being handed the keys to a billion-dollar spacecraft on your second day of astronaut training. The mission has to work. The entire economy is riding on it. Every Portuguese noble, merchant, and priest is watching. And then, before a single sail goes up, the fleet throws a party. Lisbon, in March 1500, throws the kind of farewell that a city throws when it knows some of these men aren't coming back. Wine, music, church blessings, emotional goodbyes on the docks. The fleet is a floating city, and the city sends it off like a hero. Cabral had been briefed by Vasco da Gama himself, the man who'd already sailed to India, on a navigation trick. To catch the right trade winds, you swing your fleet wide into the Atlantic. Very far west, counterintuitively west. Then you loop back east and catch India from below. So going west was intentional. That's important. The question is where intentional stopped and catastrophically lost began. Because Cabral went west, and then kept going west. For 5 weeks, past the point where any reasonable arc back toward India made sense. And nobody apparently said anything. Navigation in 1500 is basically educated guessing with a compass. Dead reckoning means you track your speed, your heading, and the time elapsed, and you calculate where you probably are. No GPS, no accurate way to measure longitude. Just stars, instinct, and whatever the ocean is doing to your ship. On April 22nd, 1500, a lookout spots a mountain. Cabral names it Monte Pascoal, Easter Mountain, because it's Easter week. Beautiful, symbolic. Also, completely wrong continent. They're 4,000 miles from India. They've just sailed into what will eventually be the state of Bahia, Brazil. Imagine being the first person on that ship to say it out loud. You look at the coastline, you look at your charts, you look at your captain, and you say, quietly, I don't think this is India. The charts don't have this place on them. It doesn't exist, and yet, there it is. They aren't standing on a small island they can dismiss. They're standing on the edge of a landmass so enormous, it will take humans centuries to fully map. The entire interior is unknown, but here's what Cabral does next. And this is where the story becomes either inspiring or deeply suspicious. He doesn't panic. He doesn't turn the fleet around. He anchors, rows to shore, and gets to work claiming the place with the calm energy of a man who absolutely meant to be here. 10 days. He spends 10 days there, like it's a scheduled stop. The Tupinambá people who live along the coast come to meet the fleet. The sailors trade red hats for parrots. Someone plays a flute. The Tupinambá apparently enjoy the flute. Cabral holds a Catholic mass on the beach, the first ever on South American soil, and plants a large wooden cross like he's checking a box on a to-do list. He names the place Ilha de Vera Cruz, Island of the True Cross. Island because he still isn't certain it's a continent. He claims it for Portugal with full ceremony, then detaches one ship from the fleet, loads it with dispatches, and sends it back to Lisbon. The rest of the fleet sails for India. As if nothing happened. The man who wrote those dispatches was Pedro Álvares Cabral, the fleet's official scribe, and his letter to King Manuel is one of the most extraordinary documents of the age. It's the world's first written description of Brazil, and it reads nothing like a formal report. Cabral describes the land in vivid detail, the trees, the birds, the color of the water. He describes the Tupinambá with genuine curiosity and zero hostility, noting their customs and their apparent happiness. He says these seem like innocent people who would easily receive our faith. Part field report, part travel diary, part hopeful pitch. The letter is warm, almost tender. Cabral was clearly moved by what he saw. He closes by asking the king personally for a favor for his son-in-law who'd gotten into trouble back home. The man just described an undiscovered continent and ends with a personal favor. It's humanly, completely perfect. But when that letter arrives in Lisbon, Manuel doesn't scream or celebrate or call an emergency council. He reacts with what historians describe as measured calm, almost like he was expecting news in roughly this vicinity. And that calm is where the conspiracy begins. 6 years before Cabral's voyage, in 1494, Spain and Portugal divided the entire undiscovered world between themselves. The Treaty of Tordesillas drew a single vertical line down the Atlantic. Everything west belongs to Spain, everything east belongs to Portugal. Two countries splitting the planet like a pizza. Here's the staggering part. The eastern tip of South America, exactly where Cabral landed, falls just barely on Portugal's side of that line, by roughly 300 miles. Out of an entire hemisphere, the odds of accidentally landing in precisely the right zone are, to put it generously, low. The conspiracy theory, well sourced if unproven, goes like this. Portuguese explorers had quietly scouted the South American coast before Cabral left. They knew land was there. The accidental swing west was a calculated land grab, timed to fall inside the treaty boundary. Cabral wasn't lost. He was executing a plan. The evidence is circumstantial, but it stacks. The unnervingly perfect treaty placement. Manuel's calm response. The fact that Cabral brought a scribe specifically to document what he found, which is a strange thing to bring if you have no idea you're going to find anything. Historians have been at this for 500 years and still disagree. The case for accident, Cabral never publicly claimed credit for a grand discovery. He died in relative obscurity around 1520, largely forgotten. Not the behavior of a man who pulled off the geopolitical heist of the century. The case for planning, prior Portuguese voyages south of the equator had almost certainly spotted the Brazilian coast. The treaty line placement is too perfect, and Manuel's reaction, moving swiftly to consolidate the claim without surprise, reads less like a king receiving shock news and more like a king receiving confirmation. The honest answer is, we don't know. The evidence that would settle it definitively either never existed or didn't survive, and that ambiguity is exactly what makes this story irresistible, because either version is extraordinary, brilliant accident or brilliant deception. Pick your history. Here's the twist nobody talks about. Cabral kept going after Brazil, sailed to India like he was supposed to, and the India voyage was a disaster. He lost 4 ships in a storm off the Cape of Good Hope. He got into an armed conflict in Calicut that went badly. He limped home with a fraction of what was expected. His contemporaries judged him a mediocre admiral who underdelivered. He was never given a major command again. The man who touched the coast of Brazil for 10 days and changed the trajectory of an entire continent was considered a middling disappointment. The consolation prize outlasted everything he was trying to do by 500 years. Brazil today, 215 million people. 5th largest country on Earth. The only Portuguese-speaking nation in the Americas. A culture that fused indigenous, African, and European threads into something completely its own. Carnival, the Amazon, the football. All of it tracing back to 10 days on a beach that wasn't on the map. Monte Pascoal is still there. Standing on the coast of Bahia, exactly where Cabral's lookout spotted it that April morning in 1500. A mountain that had no name to Europeans until a lost fleet needed to call it something. Now millions of people live in its shadow. History's biggest accidents have a funny way of becoming history's most permanent facts. A wrong turn doesn't stay a wrong turn forever. Sometimes it becomes a language, a nation, a culture. Sometimes the mistake is the whole point. If you want more stories about the spectacular errors that built the modern world, you know what to do.